It's great to welcome back to the program Cal Newport, Associate Professor of Computer Science at Georgetown University, New York Times bestselling author, host of the Deep Questions with Cal Newport podcast. My first listen every week because the episodes come out on Monday, and also the new book, Slow Productivity, The Lost Art of Accomplishment Without Burnout. Cal, it's so great to have you back on. To start with, I don't know if you see it this way, but having read really, I think just about every book you've written, this one feels less tactical and more philosophical in a sense than A World Without Email or some of the other books that you've written. And it's really sort of looking at a more overarching approach to the way we spend our time, the way we do things, et cetera. Was that your intention? Am I wrongly interpreting it that way? And is there something about the place you are in your career right now that lends itself to that type of book versus the super tactical?
Yeah, no, I think you're reading that right. Partially it's where I am in my life and career. Partially it's the topic. Like productivity is something that is the focus of a lot of discussion right now. There's a lot of debate about it. There's a lot of pushback about it. But it's really a philosophical issue, what we actually mean by productivity. And so I think that's why the book reads a little bit less tactical, is that we actually have to tackle that bigger issue first of for people who are in knowledge work. So this particular sector of work where there's quite a bit of autonomy on how you approach your work and select your projects and schedule your days. What do we really mean by productivity? And to me, that's a big picture question. The small picture tactics come in later, but we have to actually tackle that question before the details make a difference.
The three principles that you outline in the book, and of course expand on significantly, are do fewer things, work at a natural pace, and obsess over quality. Is there something, what do you think over the last 10 years has made it the most difficult to maintain those three priorities? I know that depending on what you read, some people might assume you're going to say, well, it's social media. Others will say it's email culture and the constant requirement at many jobs to be regularly emailing about work rather than doing the work itself. But if I open it up completely,
Yeah.
what over the last decade has taken people away from those principles?
Well, it's a combination of two things. And actually I would argue those principles have never been prioritized, right? So this is my historical critique that I open the book with, is that when knowledge work emerges as a major economic sector in the 20th century, the existing definitions of productivity that we used in industrial manufacturing and that we used in agricultural production, they didn't fit, right? Because these were very quantitative definitions. How many Model Ts are being produced per labor hour input? It was these ratios were very quantitative. That didn't work for knowledge work because people have diverse sets of projects they're working on. What you're doing right now might be different than what I'm working on. My workload might be different than yours. There's no set system of organizing our work we're all doing that can be improved. And so my argument is if we look back, the solution that we came up with was, okay, why don't we focus on pseudo productivity? Like we'll use visible activity as a crude proxy for useful effort. And I'm saying by the mid 20th century onwards, pseudo productivity is actually how we have been organizing and evaluating our efforts in knowledge work. So the second factor that has created the current crisis is when pseudo productivity crashed into the front office IT revolution. So when we got mobile computing, when we got networks, we had laptops, we had smartphones, we had email. Pseudo productivity plus that front office IT revolution is incompatible because now you can demonstrate visible activity at a very fine grain with email replies and Slacks at any point, anywhere. Pseudo productivity went off the rails once we introduced this new revolution in technology. And that's why we really see this burnout epidemic. I'd put it even a little bit earlier. We see it in the early 2000s in knowledge work emerge and then just get steadily worse year after year. So it's the combination of these two things that has made knowledge work more recently, I think, feel more intolerable.
I'm curious at this point, after you've worked so much on writing about different aspects of this, and you also are involved in a lot of different things. You're teaching at the university level, and you're writing articles, you're writing books, you're doing the podcast, you're a father, etc. What is sort of the landscape of your week in terms of How many hours would you say qualify as work generally for you? And then how many hours have you carved out for deep work on a weekly basis? Or if not every week is the same, on whatever kind of timeline you could tell us?
Well, so it's very seasonal, right? So first we have to differentiate, are we talking about the summer? Are we
Right.
talking about a semester with a normal teaching load, or are we talking about a semester with a reduced teaching load? But let's just focus in on a sort of an average academic semester with normal Georgetown University obligations going on.
Yes.
Typically, I differentiate between teaching days and non-teaching days. So from a context switching perspective, I like on teaching days to basically just be doing university admin and teaching related things. I'm going to meet with my students, I'm going to teach, I'm going to prep lectures, I'm going to grade, I'm going to go to meetings. The exception will be I'll often start in the morning with some deep work because if I don't write every day, I get cranky. But it would just be, hey, a burst in the morning, as psychological as it is productive, and then those are teaching days. Non-teaching days, I want the whole, morning into mid-afternoon if possible, doing deep work. And for me, that's almost always going to be writing. I'm writing all the time. Uh, the podcast, when I finally started a podcast after a decade of people telling me I should, my deal with myself is it gets a half day per week and that's it. And
Mm.
everything else has to work backwards from that constraint. If I want to add something new to the podcast, I have to figure out how to make that fit, which for me meant pretty slow growth. Okay, at first it was just me. And then when I wanted to expand the video or the format, I had to bring someone else on who could take that over so it could free up more time. It's not the right plan for hustling or getting after it, but I said it has to stay within this box. It gets one half day per week. And then the final constraint I have is I don't like to work past 5 or 5:30. Um, Occasionally I'll do a writing block in the evening. I'll sometimes do a writing block on Sunday, but that's it. And so I work backwards from that constraint as well. And so I really rely on, sometimes people look at what I'm producing and say that seems like a lot of things, but I think the key is it adds up to a lot of things over time, but I don't do a lot of things at the same time.
Is it at all even interesting to you or something you think about to potentially at some point get away from the structure of the teaching part and do the writing and the podcasting only?
Well, I think I have a pretty good balance now. So at Georgetown, for example, I'm heavily involved in the new Center for Digital Ethics. I'm a director of the new Computer Science Ethics and Society academic major. I see a lot of my work as really looking at technology and then how it impacts things like work or how it impacts things like our personal life. And my current setup actually is I have a reduced teaching load because the center buys out some of my courses. So my ideal year is I teach in one semester, and then the other semester plus the summer that follows, I'm not teaching.
Ah,
And that's a good quanta of time to, like, say, write a draft of a book, for example, because I love being on campus. I love the academics. I really love being around students. So this has been a really good balance for me. I sort of have academic semesters and more research oriented semesters.
going back a little more specifically to the book now, Slow Productivity. Are you coming across as I think you're starting to do the in-person book events, or maybe those are coming up. Maybe they haven't quite started yet. But as you talk to people about the book and you're hearing from people, what's the most common misconception about what you're saying in the book that you are hearing that might be useful to explain or correct?
Well, I mean, I would say the biggest tension is that there's two different discussions happening right now about productivity, and it's almost a little, it's not tribal, but it does sort of balkanize people, right? So there's one discourse on productivity right now is very much an anti-productivity discourse. So it's less interested in interrogating what productivity means tactically speaking, like what does it mean to people, what are we pursuing, and is more interested in seeing productivity as in effect an epiphenomenon or side effect of some sort of capitalist agenda, right? So it's
Mm.
it's, it's sort of a left anchored sort of traditional
Yep.
labor critique, right? They're very unhappy with me because I'm an intense pragmatist, right? I'm often basing my books and writing directly in the experience of individuals, right? So the experience of individuals that I'm talking to, okay, what's going on in knowledge work? I really try to have my finger on that. They're less concerned about the late stage capitalism and are more concerned about the flow and structure of their current work and how that can get better and why it's that way. And as a technologist, I often see big determinants of things that are happening in the workplace, among other places. A lot of these big determinants are unplanned side effects of technosocial collisions, right? This is a big part of my program in my recent books, is like understanding the way, we introduce this tool to do this, and it really, in a dynamical way, shakes up the way these sort of social economic systems work. And, the way email entered the scene, the way the front office IT revolution interacted with the sort of management theoretical concept of pseudo productivity. So I have this more technologist, pragmatic way of thinking this. But those who are more on the anti-productivity side, this is like a base superstructure argument, and I'm just part of the superstructure trying to, validate the cultural systems that are made to exploit labor or something like this. So that's probably the biggest tension I'm having, is this pragmatist versus theorist sort of anti-productivity movement.
In some sense, it would be like those who say the entire relationship of people to employers is the problem, and Cal's helping people figure out, how can I organize my day to make it to the gym in the morning? And it's just not enough. He's too on the fringes and not getting at the root of the problem, which is the way that the system is working in a capitalist structure.
Right. And, it's a good tension, right? Like, you want to have that critique. This has always been the critique with any sort of more revolutionary project, is you do want the tension between okay, what can we do right now versus what are the major changes to the system? You need both, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're just focusing on let's overthrow capitalism, that's probably not going to happen next week. And there's a lot of people right now who are completely overwhelmed with work and burning out. On the other hand, if you get just purely tactical, you have no long-term progress on the bigger underlying notion. So actually, this tension is not new. I think we've seen it in many revolutionary projects, and I think it's good. It's a good one to have. There's certainly you hear from the other side. Let's just put it that way.
Is there a particular tool, going back to thinking a little more tactically, that when you hear someone say, hey, I use X tool, and I don't mean X, the one that was Twitter. I'm just talking about like whatever tool you're thinking of, that you say, really often when people are using that tool in the framework of the type of writing that you're doing and sorting out the issues that you help people sort out, that tool is usually not actually helping. It's often doing more damage than it helps. That you might be able to say to our audience, I would rethink whether you're really too into using this particular tool to solve the problems I identify.
Well, I think the bigger problem people are having right now, and this is the message they're being sold by Silicon Valley, is that the tool should dictate how you work. That if you get the right productivity tool, it will fix your issues with overload or not getting things done. Where I think that's the tail wagging the dog. You need to figure out, essentially on paper, this is how I do my workload management. This is how I collaborate. This is the processes I use for the different work I do most often. And then say, hey, what tools do I need to implement this thing I came up with? And here's the thing. Often the answer to that question is pretty boring. It's like, I can use my email address and like a Google Doc and I'm probably fine, right? That's like the answer 9 times out of 10. So there's a revolution right now in productivity software. And I wrote a New Yorker piece about this a few months ago. What I like about the productivity software revolution, all these SaaS tools like Monday.com and Trello, et cetera, is I do like that it is a process-oriented view of productivity. The productivity software until about 5 or 6 years ago was just focused on making your tools faster, right? It was Microsoft Word has more features now, you can do more things with it. And now we are switching towards a process-focused understanding of productivity, that a tool like Monday.com, you don't use it to do any work. It's all about how you organize your work and collaborate. I think that's good. But the problem is you can't just subscribe to that tool and expect things to be fixed. You still have to figure out what makes sense for me. How am I doing this? And then turn to use tools. Like, I use Trello a lot, but it's not that I subscribed to Trello and that fixed things. It was, I figured out my systems, and then it turned out, oh, Trello is a useful tool for implementing parts of my system. So you don't want the tail to wag the dog with productivity tools.
One of the other tensions, I think, that in particular with this book is sort of coming to the surface, is that a lot of productivity related literature is based around optimizing efficiency, batch processing, things that are worthy and that you've also talked about, but underlying it is, let's figure out how to squeeze all of the stuff by doing it in the right order, by organizing your day in blocks. Okay, that's one approach. Slow productivity to a great degree is about actually doing fewer things, as one of the principles says, really giving those things the time that they deserve by working at whatever is the natural pace for the tasks you're trying to accomplish. So do you see that as a tension as well with some of the productivity literature, that it's less about reorganizing and inboxes and so-called getting things done, but actually saying long term you accomplish more by doing less to a great degree?
Well, I'll actually be a little more provocative here. I think it's a common conception that there is this existing productivity literature that's really pushing for optimization. But I actually think, outside of the exception of certain parts of social media, the
Mm.
sort of influencer hustle culture online, this has not actually been a message in the productivity literature, which I know pretty well, since probably the early 2000s. So let's
You know,
give
that's a good point. As you're saying it, I'm realizing all the books I'm thinking of are 20 years old.
Yeah, and I did this article a couple months ago where I followed. I looked at the definitive productivity books in every decade from the 1950s on the today, and you know
Yep.
where you get the big break? The 2000s, right? Once we get email, etc. So you get getting things done. Now that title, people just assume, okay, that this book must be about how to squeeze more work in. In fact, I just saw an episode of The Office, a rerun of The Office last night, where Daryl holds up getting things done as part of a discussion. He has all these rules for how we're going to get more work done. If you read Getting Things Done, because that book is the turning point in our relationship with productivity,
Yep.
it is not optimistic at all. It is not at all about getting more things done. It completely leaves the sort of self-actualization optimism of Stephen Covey that dominated the 80s and 90s. Instead, that is a deeply pessimistic book where his entire goal in that book is, how do you find just like moments of Zen peace amid a unbearable influx of tasks. Like, the whole thing is about how do we get psychological peace in this new sort of terrible world of constant incoming. So it's all about trying to get things out of your head and into list. He attempts, I think, somewhat nihilistically, to reduce knowledge work to just cranking widgets so that you don't. I mean, it's all about finding psychological peace. And then you
Right.
get to the 2010s. What are the best-selling productivity books of that period? You have Greg McKeown's Essentialism. You have my book, Deep Work. You have Gary Keller's book, One Thing. These are all books about doing less things,
Mm.
focusing on what's important. So you really see this reaction in the literature that exactly corresponds with the front office IT revolution, where suddenly it's not Stephen Covey saying we're going to self-actualize all of your goals in life with a perfectly tuned list of optimized activities that spread through your quads of priorities. And we get, oh my God, how do we find psychological peace? How do we escape this constant distraction? How do we do less things? So I really think it's been a remarkable turn in the way we think about productivity.
Zooming out and thinking as a consumer of the books you've written and many of the other books you mentioned, a lot of the recommendations I do really well with. My email is auto filtered into folders so that really only the most essential stuff actually hits my inbox. I'm looking at it at predetermined times. On a weekly basis, I'll go through the filtered stuff. I've got clear and defined deep work periods of the day, and I'm scheduling in the gym, and I'm using calendar and email and not extraneous tools. A lot of this stuff I'm doing, right? The part that's tough for me is I know I can always get ahead on whatever's coming up next. Even if I clear my calendar and it's 4:45 and I'm going to pick up my daughter at daycare and whatever, I know if I sit down at the computer at 9 p.m., I can start crossing things off of tomorrow's list. And now tomorrow starts to look a lot lighter and more attractive. And, I should really do a review of how YouTube title thumbnail combinations have been there. There's really no clearly defined tasks by virtue of what I do. And therefore, there's always something I should. Is there a should aspect to it? Do you hear that from entrepreneurs and content creators and others?
I mean, I have that same problem.
Yeah.
My psychology about it is well, what if I'm sick tomorrow?
Mm.
It's a weird psychology I have, but it's like,
Ah,
oh, I feel fine today. And
yes.
tonight I could get sick, I could have a hard time sleeping. I want to make hay while the sun is shining. So I struggle
Yep.
with this same idea. And I'll say this is partially like an exact reflection of this problem we're talking about. This is why when you enter the technology into this otherwise economic story, we get to the root of the problem we have, because 25 years ago, we wouldn't have this problem because we would be at home and our work was at the office and people
Mm,
call us at the office. Our computer is at the office. There is no work to be done at home. And so we just conceptualize it around being at the office. But now
right.
with people computing, I can access work anyway. And because more and more work has devolved into these smaller atoms of digital interaction, you have this like fine grained detail of work that you can dive into, right? It's not the next thing I'm doing is this report that's going to take me 4 hours. And of course, I'm not going to do that at 9. You have this fine grained work. Oh, I could like send 4 emails or like jump on and jump on this. So the finer grain that digitization gave us of work makes work not just available, but in like a quantity that we could always do it. What I always tell myself is, yes, I could do a little bit more, but the what end, right? I mean, like a lot of slow productivity is about sustainability.
Right.
What I want is to ensure on the long run, like this year, the stuff I produce, the big stuff I produce, I'm proud of, and it like moves my things forward. That's what matters. And then everything else, I don't want to get out of control. And like for the most part, I can do that between 9 and 5:30. That there's no medal for getting ahead. There's no revenue that increases based on the number of emails per day you're answering. And that way of thinking on the scale of years, I want to look at the books and like New Yorker articles I wrote and be proud of them. Everything else is like the necessary, I got to file my taxes. Like let's not let that get out of control, but it's, my focus is not to always be working on that.
The book is Slow Productivity, The Lost Art of Accomplishment Without Burnout. We've been speaking with the book's author, Cal Newport, who also hosts the Deep Questions with Cal Newport podcast. Cal, congratulations on the book and really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. I always enjoy talking with you.